digital. Okay, thank you. Their paper is The Rise in Digital Citizenship and the Participatory Museum. If you've got any questions, put them into chat for Anne. Okay, Anne and Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Graham, and also to my co-author, Jonathan. I will be the speaker for this paper, and it's a great honor to be here. This topic has particular resonance with museums and with the wider community, global community, and I'm very pleased to be presenting it. So it has a lot of concepts in there. These are more summary concepts. And I'll just put it out there because it is a very big topic. As I'm coming from Australia, I would like to start with, sorry, I'm trying to move to my next slide. An acknowledgement to country. I acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians on the country on which I am presenting today. I recognize their continuing connection to the land and waters and thank them for protecting this coastline and its ecosystems since time immemorial. I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all First Nations people present today. This acknowledgement has particular resonance with digital citizenship, and I'll touch on it again, but it brings up across concepts of identity and place, and also as a visitor and guest to a country, my relationship to the land as well as to the digital community to which I'm, to whom I'm presenting today. There are quite a lot of developments that have taken place to make digital citizenship possible. And I'm going to start with looking at digital transformation and what movements and trends have been in place to support what we call digital citizenship today. First of all, we started as consumers of technology very much from the 80s and the start of the Mac revolution, commerce, digital commerce, and the rise of the internet and email. But we're very much seeing now a rise of the citizen and a shift from consumer to citizen where there's greater agency and greater responsibility. And this will be shown in a few of the projects that I'm going to be presenting today. First of all, in terms of a short timeline, we have the first rise of the blog or citizen journalism, born by the Jorn Barger, who started the first blog called Robot Wisdom, now archived in the Wayback Machine. And this is now archived there, and the present page dates back to the 10th of August 2000. And you can see that it was a list of interesting links to all kinds of different news and offerings which you could peruse further. So also looking at hyperlinking in this example. And this goes back to 1997, the blog. Going on to 2001, we have Jimmy Wales and his establishment of Wikipedia. So on January 15th, 2001, Wikipedia was established and first edited. At the same time, we have the registration of Creative Commons, upon which Wikipedia is based as well as a associated movement and around the open access and crowdsourcing agenda that would rise through Wikipedia, and of course the early digital citizens associated with Wikipedia. Going to 2012, we have 6 years of Twitter already at 140 million users. And the hashtag that Twitter is associated with became popular in other ways, including this cover of Newsweek, its last print issue on December 30th, 2012. What's interesting about digital citizenship is also this, not just the shift from consumerism and our access to different technologies, but the ways there are more civic platforms available, which are fostering the growth of digital citizenry, including these various platforms for online consultations, and governments such as Brazil and France creating platforms for citizens to relate their legislation concerns, and other tools available to them, for instance, on vTaiwan, the Taiwanese platform. So the open access movement, starting with open source software in the 1990s, has risen considerably in terms of the way data has become open, communities open, open knowledge, open innovation, open art hardware. These have all been supports to the digital citizenship movement. But concatenating digital and citizen doesn't necessarily mean that it equals a digital citizen. There are quite a lot of other concepts around digital citizenship, which I'm going to just look at now. So in terms of a definition, we have not only somebody using IT, our information technology, but also this wider concept of how we engage online. And that can extend to positive and negative connotations of being live. So our responsibility and our agency and what that might look like, and how we might respond to other digital citizens in an online community, for instance. So if we look at the terms digital citizenship, it's actually being in the vocabulary, but not actually as pervasive as one would think in the literature. We see far greater amount of associated terms being more popular in terms of their usage up to this time, such as digital literacy, but also concepts such as citizen science, which came out from the 90s, as well as a defined term. Digital literacy is in particularly key to digital citizenship, particularly around the way we use information. We think about critically information, interpreting and evaluating information. And all those aspects of critical literacy, such as the way we might seek information, collaborate around information, and also the safety and responsibility aspects. So norms have been established for digital citizenship, particularly in the education sector. So Mark Ribble, for instance, devised 9 norms associated with digital citizenship, all around respect and education and protection. We can see digital literacy as part of that, but also digital etiquette, and also our concepts of health and well-being. And we can see the rise in social media, for instance, impacting people's health and well-being, but also their security and rights. So these are very important concepts to take on board when we're thinking about digital citizenship. The Digital Citizenship Museum is an example of an online museum that's taking on board our projects around exposing social norms around digital citizenship, responsibilities and safety concerns around new technologies that are coming into digital citizenship. This museum is completely online. It's hosted through the Second Life platform, and it comes through the community virtual library. One of the barriers, however, digital literacy being both a positive but also a barrier for those who do not have access to the internet or have the opportunity to learn digital skills. We also have increasing digital gender gaps. And this chart reveals how we still have inequalities across digital access, and also opportunities to use the internet, for instance, which might seem to be something that most of us have now, but there are quite a large gaps in the global community. During COVID, we've also recognized issues of access, and this UNESCO report about museums around the world and their situation during COVID revealed that those who had put effort into digital resources were still retaining quite a number of their engagements and users in one way or another through online engagement. But this is a disadvantage for smaller museums, for instance, and cultural organizations who did not have that opportunity to have a digital programming in place. And it also defines our access around those preparations and those digital capabilities. When we're looking at digital citizenship, it really is about notions of participation. And Nina Simon, author of the Participatory Museum, provides a way in which museums can be particularly engaging to audiences along a spectrum of different types of interaction around content to other citizens. And this has important implications in the ways that museums are evolving and also our interactions as digital citizens. So if we look again at the open access movement, we have Open Glam, which is an initiative of the Open Knowledge Foundation, and the ways in which we are able to interact with content from around the world, digital heritage content and tools and data, which allows some empowerment in the way we can participate with digital heritage. Also, the way in which museums are becoming spaces for creativity and innovation. And this stems in the maker spaces, for instance, which are both physical and digital spaces in a number of museums. Zooniverse is an example of a platform where museums can engage in crowdsourcing. That's inviting audiences from around the world to participate in annotation of their collections or transcription, and different explorations of content in which individuals can provide some curatorial input. So these are some examples of projects that are ongoing now. Annotate at the Tate Modern was an example of artist notes that were transcribed and is a finished project, which was very popular at the time. If we look at museums in a different way as sources of information and their trust in terms of public trust, we actually can see that there's a very high margin of trust in museums. And again, this falls into the norms of digital citizenship, of trust and safety and responsibility. This market research chart that came, the market research project, shows that museums are very highly regarded in the different types of cultural organizations. In fact, they may have more trust than a newspaper. And this has quite a few implications in terms of where we were going in fake news and misinformation and the role of museums in that space. So during COVID, for instance, we see museums tackling some of these big public challenges around addressing misinformation and facts around COVID, for instance, and historical pandemics, and also about areas of potential misinformation. As a grassroots project, group created a project called Day of Facts on Twitter, which was a way of combating fake news, and again reinforcing the museum as a space for public trust and for a place where we can see different perspectives around facts and science, and be reinforced through museum collections and, of course, the expertise of museums. So this Day of Facts was a day on 2017, prompted probably by the American politics situation of the time. And we can see a number of museums engaging in that, including the Field Museum, which has a video that they uploaded onto Twitter, which has over 1 million views, and other tweets that show the diversity in topics, including evolution and climate change, for instance, in ways in which we can combat misinformation and fake news. Digital citizenship is also very much tied to identity, which I began with in terms of the acknowledgement to country. The Getty Museum was engaged with a very popular project over COVID called the Getty Museum Challenge, in which individuals could recreate artworks and post them into the Getty site. And the next museum, looking at identity and surveillance, also is a very much another example in the way in which museums are engaging with types of digital citizenship. Where we are with participatory museums has moved on quite a bit in recent times, and these examples are reinforcing that, particularly as the museums are beginning to think about their purpose as social museums or as sociocratic museums, as some of the literature has labeled new museums, who are coming at the nexus of activism and social responsibility and bigger challenges such as fake news, but other challenges of climate change, and where museums can see themselves as a force for positive interaction. So the Museums Association UK have a Museums Change Lives campaign. The Happy Museum is an example of an initiative to look at generational well-being and climate change. And also citizen journalism, coming from its roots in the blog, and how we can hear more voices through citizen journalism as we're using our mobile phones, we're uploading to Twitter and to Instagram. And this is a project of the Autry Museum, the image here, of the American West in LA, in Los Angeles, who has a large population of Hispanics and migrants, and hearing their voices over a course of a number of months, which became an online journal curated by citizens of LA, mainly in the Hispanic community. So where citizen journalism has intersected with museums has been very powerful, in particular in recent times. Here we have an image of Darnella Fraser, a teenager at the time, age 17, filming the murder of George Floyd. She's now been awarded a Pulitzer Prize in journalism. And of course, we know the story of what has happened subsequent to that. And the movements around Black Lives Matter around the world, and also what it also has meant to other communities who are feeling vulnerable, underrepresented, and where there may be discrimination and impacts of socioeconomic impacts as well. So here we see protests in front of the New Smithsonian National Museum of African History and Culture. And within Canada, for instance, we've heard about the recent school deaths attributed to residential schools and Indigenous children. And the Canadian Museum for Human Rights has Indigenous curators. And this quote is very powerful, which they have on their front page. And sometimes it just takes a few words in a quote to really bring it home to how powerful different citizenship is and how we can connect to others through these words. So the other sort of times that we're living in around land and identity, we see that with what was happening in the US and elsewhere about the toppling of statues related to imperialism. And indeed in Australia, we have the image of Captain Cook being toppled over here. This is an Indigenous artist who creating a graphic novel about the Captain Cook and imperialism arriving on the shores of Australia in 1770. And of course, it shaped Australia and the Indigenous position in Australia to a great degree of and to a great shift in how we perceive land and identity and original custodians of the land. So we see that in museums, Australian Museum, who are curating actually that digital image that you've seen, and their acknowledgement of country, coming full circle to the start of my talk. So where do we go from this? And I just want to leave you with the quote from Naomi Klein, an award-winning journalist, who's always looking at the Museum of the Future and talking about it as a multidisciplinary space. And it brings about the way we can look at purpose in museums and the way we need to have many voices in this to really get context and the perspective and looking at the different aspects of what digital citizenship can mean to everyone interacting within a shared concern our topic or issue. So thank you very much for your time. Those are my details and co-author Jonathan Bowen. Thank you very much.
Okay.